wanted to get your take, Mike, because we have continued on the Jimmy Butler saga that seemingly never ends. He has been suspended again, this time indefinitely, from the Miami Heat. This is his third suspension. This one occurred after he walked out of practice yesterday after learning that he was being removed from the starting lineup. Turns out he is not back. How does this end? And Jimmy, in typical Jimmy fashion, because he is one of the pettiest players that we currently have in the NBA, he did provide a picture from the TV show Martin. CJ, I'm unfamiliar with what this means.
I was going to ask you if you were aware.
I did not know.
Mike knows about Tommy. Mike, what's the issue with Tommy, man? Where he work?
Tommy ain't got no job.
Tommy ain't got no damn job. That's just a running joke on Martin. Tommy will get up and say, all right, everybody, I'm going to work. And somebody say, Tommy, you ain't got no damn job. Every single time. Jimmy ain't got no damn job.
But he technically does because he is still a member of the Miami.
Look how happy that made
I know.
Mike. Mike, you love you some Tommy.
Hey, man. Hey, and you know what? Tommy would be like, yeah, I'm down. You know where I work at. I'm down at the building. And he was like, I thought you got fired from that job. No, I'm across the street from the building I got fired from. So, it's always one of those things, man. But Jimmy, look, guys, we talked about this a season ago, right? Or going into last season. I told you Jimmy did not, like, as much as Miami has ever acquiesced to any player in Pat Riley's history, he's done for Jimmy Butler. And I'm scratching my head because I cannot figure out why that is the case. But I'm not going to put this all on Jimmy. Like Jimmy's, when he's right, he's given it. He got the Heat to 2 more finals than I would have ever thought they would have gotten to based on what he had working around him. But I will say this, and I'm glad you guys asked me about this because I've been wanting to get this out off my chest for this too. The problem is, and it's not necessarily a problem, it's a reality. These NBA players now are making what Jay-Z calls FU money, right? And Jimmy Butler getting suspended without pay when he's making $50 million, it's not hurting him. It's not hurting him. Jimmy Butler, Bradley Beal, like all of these guys, they're making $20 million more this year than Michael Jordan ever made in any single season that he's played in. Think about that for a minute. Yeah. When you're making $50 million in a season to play basketball, losing $7 million is not going to hurt you. So all of this stuff that's going on with the suspensions, Jimmy's not, his lifestyle isn't changing based on him not getting that check every 1st and 15th, right? Now, if that happens to us, if we get suspended without pay, yes, our mortgage won't get met, right? There's going to be, kids are going to have to eat top ramen as opposed to, some other kind of food that they love and shrimp and all that kind of stuff. But these players right now, which is why Bradley Beal and Jimmy Butler and all of these guys can stick it back to the teams now, is because they're making a level of money where it doesn't hurt them anymore to get suspended without pay. It just doesn't. And until that changes, or when you can afford to say F you and throw the middle finger up at your team and it doesn't have any consequence that hurts you, guess what? Jimmy can drag this out as long as he wants to. Now, eventually, the Players Association will have to step in, and I know you guys got to get to Will Coleman from here, but the Players Association will have to step in, and they will have to dictate something that's on the best interest of the league, because this has become an embarrassment. And when you have 2 stubborn guys like this in a Cold War, guess what's going to happen? The Miami Heat as an organization is going to suffer. Pat Riley's legacy going out the door is going to suffer. And Jimmy Butler is not going to ultimately get what he wants either, because it's only going to taint the next locker room he has to go to if they're not careful. So it's a lose, 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 but all sides can afford it, but especially Jimmy Butler right now, because that money doesn't mean much to him as it relates to losing. He would rather make a point than make $1 out of this.
The Miami Herald has, of course, they're going to have articles about Jimmy. It's the Miami Herald. This is coming straight from them. Butler's set to lose at least about $5.7 million of his $48.8 million salary for the season, assuming he's still on the Heat roster for each of the first 5 games of the most recent indefinite suspension. So right now, I think he's lost about per the Herald, he's lost about $2.3 million, or will lose $2.3 million with this this suspension. Once this suspension hits, if he's still on the roster after the trade deadline, he'll lose the $5-ish million.
I have to be honest.
And we'll still have $42 million to play around with in Miami.
I hate talking about this part of
or you can suspend him for the rest of the year. If you suspend him for the rest of the year, guess what? He's still walking away with 20-something.
Exactly. It's a nauseating amount of money that just like we're talking about it like it's monopoly money, and it's because it's someone who makes a salary, and there are many people who make salaries that are that much, and the difference between. Anyway, that's a longer conversation for a longer day.
But that's the goal.
However,
the goal is to make enough money to where you can look at your boss and say, "Hey, boss, I'm not doing this anymore."
Precisely.
Like that's the
99% of us will never have that opportunity, and we will jealously witness somebody who is able to so steadfastly sit in his ways and say, "I don't care. I can lose this money. Let's do a staring contest because this doesn't matter to my pocketbooks."
Well, and to CJ's point, like you look at your boss and say, "Hey, I don't want to do this anymore." So there's a defiance there, but it's also your reputation at stake. But you also have to change your mindset too. You're making so much money at this point where you're your own entity. You're your own independent contractor, right? So it's like, okay, this is my corporation. I call the shots when it comes to what my brand and my corporation is. The NBA and professional sports has paid these guys to become their own individual brands who are assigned to an organization, but they're still their brands. And that's the part that all of this money and it's a great sport. Everybody's making money. It's lucrative. We all love our jobs, but that the reality of it is when you have a person that's empowered like that, that's what the player empowerment era is. They make enough money now where they're empowered to say, nope, I'm not doing this. And this is going to be my way at a certain point. And we're past that point with the Miami Heat, unfortunately, with Jimmy Butler.
And it's not just the money, right? It's the way we consume these things also. So Jimmy Butler not being on the Heat doesn't mean he just fades from consciousness. I feel like refresh my memory. I feel like the Knicks had an issue with Marbury, something similar to this at one point in time. And Stephon Marbury, to try and stay in our consciousness, would just buy seats right behind the Knicks bench. They wouldn't let him kick it with the team. They wouldn't let him sit with the team. But he's like, okay, cool, you're still paying me. You're suspending me, but I'm just going to buy tickets behind the bench. There was no social media back then. There was no way for Stephon, other than doing that, to stay in our consciousness. Well, now, because we got Instagram and Twitter and Blue Sky and Mastodon and all these other weird-ass social media apps, Jimmy Butler can stay relevant. He can throw up a picture of Tommy from Martin on Instagram.
He can have his agent do the "I'm back" statement last week. Kevin Love can keep us in the loop of every pop culture reference that he's cycled through.
So yes, it's not just the money. It is in part how we go about consuming things. It used to be you suspend a player. Like Ron Artest got suspended all those games that season.
You didn't see him.
And you just didn't know what Ron was doing. Somebody rolled up on him with a camera outside, like a drive-through or something like that. He's like, yeah, I got a record label now. I was like, oh, okay. Ron Artest has a record label, I guess. And we just kept on going on with our lives. Well, now Ron Artest, I got a record label. It's like, okay, I got to follow Ron Artest. I got to see what this label's got going on. It's a whole lot of different things leading to this sort of an era, Mike, but I think that you're right.
But don't you think, Mike, like when you say eventually something will have to change, once the cat's out of the bag, or the proverbial bag, when it comes to player empowerment, do you really foresee a world where it rolls back to a certain degree?
No, I don't see this going back. I don't see this ever going back to a place where Jimmy and Miami are good. But what
I just mean long term. Like when someday when a new CBA comes out.
Yes. It's no, because the money is always going to be at a point now where, again, we're just in this era, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to change unless, there's a drastic market correction. But even to that point, as CJ said, there's so many different channels and vehicles where players can get their image and their branding and what they want to get out there. They're always going to look at the NBA and what their main job is just part of what they are. It's just a part of it. So I don't see that changing from that standpoint unless there's a major market correction, because the money is just too, like we saw James Harden basically do a protest while he was still on the court.
James Harden just got fat.
Yeah, he got fat. He stopped playing hard. And
that's child's play compared to this.
Yeah. We saw Ben Simmons just say, you know what, I'm having a mental breakdown right now. I'm not going to show up for work. We've seen guys do these things before, but never to this degree. And Jimmy has all his faculties about him. He knows exactly how calculated he is. And so he knows what he's doing. I just think at some point the league will have to, like, remember, David Stern stepped in and said, you know what, Chris Paul, you're not going to LA for the best interest of the game. You're going to, the Clippers, not the Lakers, right? Like, it was one of those deals. You saw the commissioner step in and remove owners from ownership situations when it was detrimental to the game overall. I just think at a certain point, this is going to embarrass the league to a level where if it's not resolved by the All-Star break, there's going to be something where the league is going to have to step in and either put Miami in its place or Jimmy Butler or them both some kind of way in their place to make sure this is not a stain for the rest of the season.
The Jessica Benson Show with CJ Hurt, live every weekday at 8 a.m.